1,524. That's a really big number, right? That's the amount of people that have been executed in the United States since 1976. It's a controversial topic, I know, but this topic is one that has been the subject of debates for decades. The definition of capital punishment, according to Oxford Languages, is the legally authorized killing of someone as punishment for a crime. But my question today is, does the legality of this law equal morality? As a criminal justice major, it's important for me to know the statistics and disparities of innocent and guilty people on death row. So my goal today is to inform everyone of the statistics and research that I've looked at. I'd like to start with execution rates. As I stated in the beginning, according to Gabriel Dance of the Marshall Project, 1,524 people have been executed in the U.S. since 1976. And according to the NAACP Criminal Justice Department, Black people make up 42% of death row and 35% of those executed, despite only being 13% of the population. In trials seeking capital punishment, homicides of white victims are more likely to receive capital punishment. And on the subject of sentencing and plea bargaining, 48% of white defendants receive lesser sentencing, while only 25% of Black defendants and 28% of Hispanic defendants receive lesser sentencing. Now, using Texas as an example, there are currently 210 inmates on death row in our state. Faces of Death Row states that despite only 12% of Texas residents being Black, 44% of defendants waiting capital punishment in our state are Black. Now, with these inmate statistics in mind, I'd like to talk about wrongful convictions. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, states that between 1976 and 2016, 4.1% of executed defendants were innocent. What this statistic means is that for every 10 executions, more than one person was innocent. Richard A. Appel Jr. of the New York Times explains that on August 21, 2019, Larry Swearingen was executed, despite no DNA evidence even linking him to the crime he was convicted for. Now, you might know this next name if you've ever done a little bit of research on wrongful convictions. Carlos de Luna, executed in December 1989. According to the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, Mr. de Luna was executed despite no DNA, fingerprints, hair, or reliable eyewitnessing even placing him at the crime scene. The next case I'm going to talk about is highly controversial, and I encourage you to do some of your own research after I finish here today, because this case has too much information to even expand on with the amount of time that I have here. Cameron Todd Willingham, executed in 2004. The Equal Justice Initiative explains that Mr. Willingham was convicted on 3 counts of capital murder and arson. Scientists have stated that the evidence he was convicted on was, quote, junk science. Now, multiple reports to posthumously exonerate him have been drawn up, but none of them have ever been passed. So, with the rate of wrongful convictions, this raises the question, how much money is being used to carry out these trials and executions with some of these defendants not even being guilty? Well, according to the Criminal Justice Degree Hub, it costs about $2.3 million to carry out a death penalty trial in Texas. As a comparison, it costs around $653,500 to house a prisoner in our state for 40 years. The state typically pays for some of the expenses for the trial, but David Chappell of Prison Legal News explains that the rest of the expenses are left to taxpayers, the property taxes usually being raised. As well, most of the defendants in these trials aren't even able to pay for their own lawyers, so the state just simply appoints them a public defender. This point brings us to the question of, are these defendants being properly represented and sentenced accordingly? And if the answer is no, what are the benefits of capital punishment? Well, according to the Death Penalty Information Center, there aren't many. The murder rates in states without the death penalty is lower than those with the death penalty, and this gap has been consistently growing since 1990. The homicide rate for death penalty states has been 48 to 101% higher than non-penalty states. In the 2014 FBI Uniform Crime Report, it stated that the southern states are the ones with the highest murder rates, all of them having legalized the death penalty. Murder rates aside, crime is raised in counties where the death penalty trials are held due to the amount of money it costs to hold these trials. Amnesty International USA states that the money takes from these communities, taking money from things like mental health and drug treatment, crime prevention, and emergency services. It doesn't just take from these places, though. No, it doesn't end there. Death penalty trials deter money from the prosecutions of other crimes, such as domestic violence and child abuse. So, with everything that I've talked about, execution rates, wrongful convictions, the major costs of these trials alone, and the rate of crime deterrence, I'll circle back to my original question. Does the legality of this law equal morality, or is this law more trouble than it's worth? Is it worth it to take money from these communities to execute these prisoners? And is it worth it to take the risk of this person being innocent and executing them anyway? Either way, my hope is that the information I presented encourages you to do some more research of your own and helps you to stay informed on the current death row statistics, as well as how it affects our country, good or bad.